Have you ever told yourself, it's too late? I should have started years ago. I don't have enough time now. I missed my chance. And because of that, you don't begin. You don't take the class. You don't write the pages. You don't return to the dream. And you don't make the next move. Week 8 of The Artist's Way is about one of the most common creative blocks, time. But not in the practical sense, not just schedules, not just calendars, not just being busy. This week is about the way we use time as a reason not to risk. We say, I'm too old. It will take too long. I should already be further ahead. Or what's the point now? And underneath those statements is often something deeper: grief, fear, discouragement, and sometimes old creative wounds that were never fully healed. Hi, I'm Leslie, and over the past year, I've been guiding deep dive sessions into the artist's way, helping people move through different stages of creative recovery. And week 8 is called Recovering a Sense of Strength. This is a powerful week because it asks us to look honestly at the losses, delays, disappointments, and old conditioning that may have weakened trust in ourselves. But it also gives us a way back, not through dramatic change, not through huge leaps, but through small acts of creative strength. One step, one page, one action, one choice. This week explores four important themes: survival, loss, time, and filling the form. Let's begin with survival. Julia Cameron says that one of the most difficult tasks an artist must face is artistic survival. That is a strong phrase, artistic survival, because every creative life includes loss: loss of hope, loss of confidence, loss of money, loss of opportunity, loss of momentum, loss of self belief. And many of these losses are not visible to others. A project that didn't get accepted, a performance that was criticized, a manuscript that was rejected, a teacher who discouraged you, a dream you quietly gave up on, a chance you didn't take, a piece of work you abandoned. These may seem small from the outside, but to the artist within, they can feel very deep. Julia makes an important point here. Artistic losses need to be acknowledged. They need to be named. They need to be mourned. Because when they are not mourned, they become scar tissue. And that scar tissue can begin to block future growth. This is very important because many of us don't stop creating because we lack talent. We stop because something hurt, something disappointed us, something embarrassed us, something made us feel foolish for trying. And instead of healing that wound, we told ourselves, it doesn't matter. I didn't really want it anyway. Or that was stupid. Who was I kidding? But very often, it did matter. And part of us has been carrying that loss for years. So week 8 begins by asking us to be honest about the places where we were wounded creatively. Not to stay there, not to blame others forever, but to begin healing. Because strength does not mean pretending it didn't hurt. Strength begins by admitting, yes, that hurt. Yes, that mattered. Yes, I lost something in there. And I am willing to begin again. So here's the first reflection for this week. What creative loss have you never fully acknowledged? Where did criticism or rejection make you stop trusting yourself? What dream did you quietly put away because it hurt too much to keep hoping? The second major theme in this chapter is criticism. Julia makes an important distinction. Not all criticism is harmful. Some criticism helps us. Some criticism brings clarity. Some criticism gives us the feeling, yes, I can see that and I can work with that. That kind of criticism is useful. It is specific, it is grounded, it gives us something we can actually use. But there is another kind of criticism that does damage, the vague kind, the shaming kind, the kind that says, you're not really talented. This isn't good. You don't have what it takes. The kind that doesn't help the work improve. It simply makes the artist feel small. And this is especially damaging when it comes from someone in authority, like a teacher, or a mentor, or an editor, or a parent, someone we trusted, someone whose opinion we allow to enter deeply. Julia talks about how these wounds can block artists for years. And I think many people watching this will recognize that. Sometimes one careless comment, it can live inside us for decades. And we don't even realize we are still obeying it. We think we are making a practical decision. But really, we are still responding to an old wound. So, part of week 8 is recovering our own authority, not rejecting all feedback, but learning to ask, was that criticism useful? Was it specific? Did it help me grow? Or did it simply shame me into silence? That is an important difference because your creative life should not be governed by the most damaging voice you ever heard. So here is the second reflection. Whose voice still influences the way you see your creativity? Was that voice truthful or simply damaging? What would change if you stopped treating that voice as the final authority? The third theme is one of the most powerful in this chapter, gain disguised as loss. Julia gives us a very useful question. How can this loss serve me? Where does it point my work? That is not an easy question because when we are in the middle of loss, we usually ask, why me? Why did this happen? Why did this fail? Why didn't it work out? I did everything right. Those are understandable questions, but they often keep us trapped in the pain. Julia suggests a different question. What next? What next? That question, it creates movement, not denial, movement. It allows loss to become information. A rejection might point you toward a stronger version of the work. A closed door might point you toward another path. A disappointment might show you where you were too dependent on one outcome. A failure might reveal a completely different direction. This does not mean loss is pleasant. It does not mean rejection does not hurt. It means loss does not have to be the end of the story. It can become part of the path. Week 8 asks us to metabolize pain into energy. This is a powerful idea. Not suppressing the pain, not dramatizing it, not staying frozen inside it, but use it. Ask, what is this teaching me? What next step is available now? Where is another door? This is how creative strength develops. Not because nothing hurts us, but because we learn how to continue. So here's the third reflection. Where have I been asking why me instead of what next? What loss might be pointing me toward another door? What small action could support my artist after this disappointment? And now we come to one of the biggest blocks of week 8, age and time. And this section contains one of the most famous exchanges in the artist's way. The question is, do you know how old I'll be by the time I learn the piano? And the answer is the same age you will be if you don't. That line is simple. It cuts through so much avoidance because many of us use age as a reason not to begin. We say, I'm too old, it's too late, I should have started earlier, I look foolish, I'll be behind everyone else. We also say things like, I'm too young. But underneath that is often not age, it's fear. Fear of being a beginner, fear of comparison, fear of looking awkward, fear of starting from the beginning. And the ego does not like beginnings. The ego wants to appear competent. The ego wants to already know. The ego wants a finished product. But creativity is not built that way. Creativity lives in process, not just product. Julia makes a very important point here. We often focus on having done something, having written the book, having mastered the instrument, having finished the painting, having arrived. But the soul is nourished by doing. I am writing. I am learning. I am practicing. I am taking the class. I am beginning. That is where creative life happens. Not only in the finished result, but in the motion itself. So if you're telling yourself that it's too late, or even if you're telling yourself it's too early, week 8 asks you to look again. Too late for what? Too late to be curious? Too late to learn? Too late to practice? Too late to enjoy the process? Too late to become more alive? Maybe the real question, it's not how long will it take? Maybe the real question is, who will I become if I begin? Who will I become if I begin? And so here's the fourth reflection. Where am I using age or time as an excuse? What would I begin if I gave myself permission to be a beginner? What process would nourish me even if I never mastered it? The final major theme in this chapter is called filling the form. And this is one of the most practical ideas in this chapter. Filling the form means taking the next small step, not the dramatic step, not the life changing step, not that giant transformation, the next small step. If you want to write a screenplay, write today's pages. If you want to paint, wash the brushes, buy the canvas, clear the table, make the sketch. If you want to act, look for the class. If you want to write, open the notebook. If you want to create, ask, what is the next right action? Julia is very clear here. Blocked creatives often scare themselves with the big picture. We imagine that if we take one creative step, we will have to change our whole life. We think, if I become a writer, I'll have to leave my job. If I take art seriously, I'll have to change everything. If I follow this dream, my whole life will fall apart. And that kind of thinking becomes another block. It makes creativity feel dangerous, huge, overwhelming. So instead of taking a small step, we freeze. But no one is asking you to leap. This is the most important point. No one is asking you to leap. The creative life is built through small actions, small choices, small commitments, small acts of care. A creative life is not made by one dramatic decision. It is made by what you do today, and then tomorrow, and then again. This is where strength is recovered. Not in fantasy, not in anxiety, not in obsessing over the odds, but in action. Julia makes a very important distinction. The wrong question is, what are the odds? The better question is, what next? Because thinking about the odds often becomes a way to procrastinate. We analyze, we worry, we calculate, we imagine failure. And all the while, we avoid the simple action available now. So, week 8 brings us back to the present. What can I do today? What can I do with the life I have right now, with what I have right now? What is the next small step? And that is filling the form. And over time, those small steps create real change. So here's the final reflection for this chapter. What small creative action can I take today? Where am I using anxiety to avoid action? And what is the next right step in the life I already have? Week 8 is ultimately about strength, but not strength as force, not strength as pushing harder, not strength as pretending nothing hurts. It's about the strength to acknowledge losses, the strength to heal from criticism, the strength to begin again, the strength to stop saying too late, the strength to take the next small step. And maybe this is the deepest lesson of this week. Your creative life does not require you to have everything figured out. It asks you to begin where you are, with what you have, one small action at a time. So if you take one thing from this week, let it be. It's not too late. You do not have to leap. You only have to take the next step. Thank you for joining me for week 8 of The Artist's Way. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. And what is one small step that you can take today in your creative recovery? Thank you for listening, and I will see you in week 9.